begin commemorating Yom HaZikaron. We remember those Israeli soldiers who died in the course of service, as well as victims of terror. We remember back to the year 1860, which is when the Yishuv, the Jewish settlement in the land of Israel, is recognized by the Ministry of Defense. And sadly, we go until the present day. My first trip to Israel was when I was 17, after my grade 11 year. I spent 5 wonderful weeks touring the land with USY. But it wasn't until my first year of university at Bar Ilan, just outside of Tel Aviv in Ramat Gan, that I really felt like I was of the land, part of the land. When I, as an individual, got to explore Israel by myself and on my own terms. 2000, 2001 was, of course, the first year of the Second Intifada. When I arrived in Israel at the very beginning of September, no one knew what the year ahead would be like. Sadly, during my time in Israel that year, between September of 2000 and June of 2001, 159 people, soldiers and civilians, were added to the list of those whom we remember today or tonight and tomorrow on Yom HaZikaron. I hope that you'll all tune in tomorrow at 8 p.m. for a special Mariv service as we remember for Yom HaZikaron and we begin celebrating for Yom HaAtzmaut. I'd like this morning to remember 4 people who were killed during that year of mine in Israel, when I really started to feel part of the land. I begin with Yossi Tabeja, who was 27 when he was killed. Yossi immigrated from Ethiopia as part of Operation Moses in 1984, leaving behind his family. He arrived as a child and lived with another Ethiopian family who viewed him as their son. He was later sent to boarding school, and his adoptive mother sent her own son with him so that Yossi would not be alone. Sadly, Yossi's mother passed away in Ethiopia, but his father and several of his siblings subsequently made their way to Israel. Yossi excelled in his studies and everything that he did. He served in the army as a paratrooper and afterwards was transferred to the border police, where he served as an officer in the joint Israeli-Palestinian patrols of Judea and Samaria in the West Bank. He wanted to be a role model for other Ethiopian immigrants. One day on patrol, the 2 jeeps, his, the Palestinian, stopped for a rest break when his Palestinian counterpart suddenly shouted Allahu Akbar and fired on Yossi. He was shot at point-blank range. He was transported to Beilinson Hospital, where he died shortly thereafter. Border Police Superintendent Yosef Tabeja was buried in Ramla Military Cemetery. A community center was established in his name in Ramla, where there are special programs to advance the Ethiopian immigrants in the area. Minor immigrated alone from France in 1999 and served in the Air Force. Jerusalem. Julie moved in with a family in Kibbutz Sikin in the south. I expected to see her become an important figure one day, her adoptive father at the kibbutz, Nache Lior said. She was knowledgeable about whatever you talked to her about, especially literature and art. Her idealism reminded me of what we used to be like, Lior added. Now her dream has been shattered. Ruthie Klein, Weiner's roommate from Jerusalem, said that she was a consummate European, polite, smart, and informed. All Julie thought about was volunteering for the army, Klein said, and made do without visiting her family in France, consoled by the thought of them one day seeing her in uniform. I remember very clearly the day that Julie was murdered. She was 21. She was one of 8 Israelis killed when a Palestinian crashed a bus into a crowded bus stop at Azor Junction south of Tel Aviv. It was at the time the deadliest Palestinian attack on Israelis in 4 years. She was killed while waiting for a bus that was going to take her to the base where her officer's training course was set to begin. She was on her way to continue her lifelong dream of becoming an officer. Sergeant Julie Weiner was laid to rest in Jerusalem after the arrival of her parents, her brother, and sister from France. And at her funeral, her adoptive kibbutz parents stood alongside her own biological ones. Finally, Yelena and Yulia Nelimov. Again, I remember very clearly where I was when I heard about their murders. I'd spent my final few days towards the end of my trip in Israel, camping with friends in the Golan Heights. It was a wonderful few days, very hot in June. I remember getting back onto the bus, or maybe it was a Sherut from the Golan Heights, and listening to the radio and following along the news of what had happened just before the Dolphinarium disco. Yulia Nelimov was 18, lived in Tel Aviv. She and her sister Yulia were amongst the 21 people killed that night at the Dolphinarium disco. Yulia and Yelena immigrated from Russia 5 years before with their mother Ella, their brother Sasha, and their grandmother. It was the two of them, Yelena and Yulia, who pushed their family to make Aliyah, to leave Russia for a better life that they imagined for themselves in Israel. Yelena graduated from Sheva High School and planned to continue her studies. Their friends said that the girls loved dancing and going out. They're survived by their brother, their mother, and their father, who still lives in Russia, or did at the time. The two of them were buried in the Yarkon Cemetery in Tel Aviv. This is a difficult Yom HaZikaron in Israel. Upwards of 1.5 million Israelis typically visit the graves of their loved ones in cemeteries around the country. But of course, with COVID-19, many of them are choosing and are being told to stay at home. It's a day of collective mourning. It's not just the Yortzeit for one. It's a national day of remembrance for all. So I hope that all of you take a moment or two as Yom HaZikaron begins tonight or tomorrow to pause, to stand, and to think Yosef, or Julie, or Yelena, or Yulia, or one of the over 26,000 Israelis and foreigners who were in Israel visiting, remembered or commemorated on Yom HaZikaron. Thank you.